All right, welcome back in. Hanging with Hester, presented by Richard Honda, here with Charles Hannegriff today. Going to catch up with one of our guys. Actually been a while. Billy Embody, 247 Sports, here to talk LSU recruiting. Billy, how you doing?
I'm doing well, guys. How about you?
Doing well. Glad to have you on as always. And look, I know that recruiting right now is in a little bit different place, but LSU on the football side of things has still picked up a commitment. Dakota Mitchell out of Florida is the latest, a three-star prospect. And so let's talk about him. Let's talk about maybe where recruiting is going to go after this. Let's start with Dakota Mitchell.
Yeah, Dakota Mitchell is somebody I think is scratching the surface. He played both sides of the ball over in Winter Park, which is just near Orlando area in Florida. And from talking with him, he said, look, I played a lot of wide receiver, and I really feel like my best ball is ahead of me as a safety. So he's still kind of getting his feet wet at the position, and somebody that can play free safety, can line up, I think, a little bit in the slot as well, and cover and move. And as he gets more comfortable back there, I think he's going to see a rise in the rankings. LSU beat out a bunch of quality teams here. Florida, Georgia, Clemson had offered him and hosted him on an unofficial visit. So a really high-quality land here. And the first one in really a while for Ed Ogeron and the staff. I think kind of the late season run, and then only a couple of unofficial visit weekends from that time until now, they were really able to kind of get back on it with a commitment. And Dakota had visited for a game this fall and was set to come back to LSU for an official visit, and opted to go ahead and commit. He said, I didn't need to get back to Baton Rouge. I knew I was already that was already the place for me.
Billy, as you know, LSU is a big team on, hey, we want to have you in for our camp. We want to see you in person. We want to put our eyeballs on you and let, our staff see you and figure out, would you work at LSU? Might not have that opportunity. Actually, probably won't have that opportunity this year with everything that's going on. How much has that changed the recruiting plan?
Man, and I think we're all trying to figure that out, too, from an evaluations perspective. I mean, it's going to take a lot more just getting out and seeing guys in person this fall. And I don't know if that'll slow them down in terms of how they take commitments and who they get on board over the summer, or whenever we start seeing unofficial and official visits start, going again. I don't know how it's all going to look. I think there's a chance we could see them get camps in late June. That's the timeline for their elite camp, which is really star-studded just about every year. So I hope that we get that. But really, it's going to take a lot of film watching. It's going to take a lot more communication with the high school coaches, asking around, and just trying to assemble as much video and evaluation metrics that they can. And it's difficult, and it actually kind of puts them in a similar spot for us when we do rankings. I mean, so much of it is film, so much of it is watching 7-on-7 instead of us getting to work out these players like the coaches do. So it's a weird spot for them to be in, but you just got to trust your evaluations. And kind of going back to Dakota Mitchell, Bill Bush did a great job with this one, and he has really the last two cycles. So he got them in on Jordan Tolles early, who they ended up signing, and he ended up being a top 150 prospect. And I think he's got as much upside as anybody in that 2020 class. And they were also in a strong position for Lathan Ransom and Xavier Alford, two really highly touted safeties that ended up going elsewhere. But Bill Bush has done a really nice job evaluating safeties, and you can add Maurice Hampton as well there.
Billy, as difficult as it is for the football staff to deal with this, the basketball staff, I think, it's even harder. They've got three signees. They've got two commitments. They've got two transfers, one which may not be able to play next year. Then you've got the top of the roster that may go pro, the bottom of the roster where you may have some attrition, some natural attrition. And so I'll ask you, is Will Wade done signing guys? And off the current roster, how is he managing to account for who may or may not be back off of this current group?
Yeah, basketball is, like you said, probably one of the most impacted sports because that late signing period is coming up. It's April 15th, I believe, is the date where that starts going, and you'd really love to be able to get guys on campus or go see them in their gym workouts this spring and kind of getting closer to that. I don't think Will Wade and his staff are done signing guys. I think they've got one that they feel really good about, Frank Anselm, who's a 2021 prospect who could very well reclassify. I think he'll get on board at some point. And then they're in on two really highly touted 5-stars in Jonathan Kuminga and Musa Cisse, and both very different players. But with Musa Cisse, Dante especially, he's a 2021 that is looking to, I think, reclassify, and who knows kind of how the academics on that work out with the way, classes are going online for high schools or taking tests to, take the ACT and SAT and kind of move into that 2020 class. So that maybe throws a wrench into things for him. But no, I don't think they're done signing guys. And then on the roster, I think Emmett Williams is gone. Will Wade has talked a lot about that, and I think he's just ready to go make some money and take a look at the pro game. But I think for a lot of players, it's still maybe take a little pause and say, okay, is this the time to do this? Because I think Emmett's somebody that teams would want to get in person and bring him in and work him out, and he's so athletic, and they want to see what they're working with more than anything. And I think his sophomore year wasn't as good as he thought it was, but I mean, as he thought it was going to be. But he's got so much upside, and he can be developed. And so I think you'll see Emmett go pro. But as far as managing the rest of the roster, yeah, it's just conversations with these players and working through things. But I think basketball, even more so than football sometimes, all of that just kind of works out and ends up just kind of working itself out naturally.
Billy, walk me through how soon they might be able to find out about a reclassification and what goes into that, because I know last year they went very, very deep with N'Faly Dante, prospect was originally from Mali, was out of Kansas. He ended up on Oregon's roster, but I know they recruited him a long, long time before they finally got some clarification on that. Walk me through with Anselm exactly when they're going to know.
Yeah, it's I would say to be determined. I think N'Faly is a good example of sometimes where it can go wrong, where his eligibility in terms of academics was up in the air for a while there at Oregon once he finally ended up there. But on the other hand, you had guys like Andre Hyatt, who Will signed late and was ready to go and ready to reclassify. And so you can see those guys take it into July and take it even into August in some cases. But so many of these basketball players are already kind of, I think for a lot of the 21s that we're talking about, they should be in the 2020 class. So maybe their academics are a little bit more in order. But it's just when you don't know when you can take a test, or you don't know when you're going to find out about grades, if classes or schools are closing or whatever, it just throws a little bit more uncertainty into it. So you can see these reclassifying guys take it into the summer for sure. And I think with everything going on, we'll see that even more this cycle.
Catching up with Billy Embody of 247 Sports here on Hangin with Hester. Let's transition back to football real quick, Billy. And everyone always wants to know, what's Louisiana look like as far as prospects? And when you look at this class, and last couple of years we've had some really good classes in Louisiana, and last year it was down a little bit. Where do you grade this class right now moving forward?
Yeah, I think some of the top end guys like Mason Smith, like Chris Hilton and Brian Thomas, and this 2021 receiver class in Louisiana is pretty ridiculous. I don't envy Mickey Joseph and Ed Ogeron and Scott Linehan trying to figure out which one to take, because they all have different styles, different positives that they bring to the table. So in that regard, Louisiana is really, really deep. Sage Ryan is a heck of an athlete out of Lafayette and has LSU ties to Kevin Falk, Trev Falk. So it's a really good class. I think 2022 is pretty outstanding. I think when we put together that board in the rankings just a couple weeks ago, really, when that came out, we were looking at it and saying, wow, Louisiana could have 10 top 247 prospects in that first rankings. And that's really deep. That's really high quality talent. And I think as guys continue to develop, we could see a double-digit top 247 class in 2022. But 2021 is really high-end. I think Mason Smith and Sage Ryan and players like that, really stand out. And I think we could see them go a little bit more nationally at other positions outside of receiver.
Billy, let me ask you this before we let you go. What's the schedule going to be like as far as the recruiting restrictions and all the dead periods and all the things they're putting on recruiting right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's to be determined still. And right now, April 15th is that end date for the dead period. If that ends up being the date that it ends, I think you get it more on track. Coaches can go out, they can go visit recruits. If they do decide to do that, I think with some of the uncertainty, you might see some schools just say, you know what, we're going to keep guys local or keep keep guys at home and they can still meet with players virtually and how they've been doing it. And then that'll get everything back on track for camp season and official visits and things like that. But with everything being canceled or postponed, I would think that stretches probably into May, and that's just a guess. But a lot of uncertainty, and the only thing they can do right now is just keep talking to these guys, keep texting them. I think a lot of coaching staffs around the country have been creative in meeting with prospects over Skype and FaceTime and all that. And a lot of coaches are, getting on video games and playing, and I think some of them across the country are playing prospects. So it's kind of a wild time in terms of how you're trying to bond and build those relationships.
Is T-Bob Hebert going to become a coach now? Video games, Skype?
A consultant.
Okay, yeah.
Consultant.
Okay, fair enough.
They're bringing back enough LSU Tigers. I mean, he could be on the staff. He could be a little shadow staff video game recruiting specialist.
Oh, I love it. All right, he's Billy Embody, 247 Sports. Billy, appreciate your time.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.